as and when a citizen or the business has to come to the government, that moment of truth is actually very important. It has to be as seamless as possible. It has to be in a situation whereby people can get their things done quickly. So this is where we started this concept, what we call moments of life. We find that throughout your life, there are many occasions where you have to go to the government, whether it's registering the birth, claiming in Singapore what we call a baby bonus, registering a whole bunch of other things that needs to be done. Now, these things are, well, they're not exactly pleasant to do, but they have to be done. And the best thing for government to do is to make it as seamless as possible. Most governments are fragmented. And because we essentially take what we call an inside-out approach, we never see it from the eyes of the citizen. And that's, I think, where the first big, huge problem comes in. The second problem is really the next step, right? Government systems themselves are pretty archaic. There are a lot of legacy systems. And to be able to tie many of these services together, technically it's a challenge. It's not as simple as the newer systems that are out there. You end up having to really try to bring together multiple systems that are essentially not talking to each other. The third problem is related to the first two. Government data is actually pretty, I would say, dirty in a sense. We collect a lot of data, but there isn't really a single source of truth. Those three things put together becomes a very complex problem to solve for many governments. You're tackling with legacy systems. You don't have a single source of truth in terms of data. And then you'll find that everybody basically have no incentive to collaborate, actually. So those three things really is a big challenge for most governments. About 7 years ago, we kind of made a resolve that we're going to start putting together what we call a single source of truth. And fortunately, in Singapore, we have a national ID that's called SingPass. We use SingPass as the single digital ID for all citizens. But underneath SingPass, we started curating a bunch of pertinent fields related to a citizen. For example, your address, your marital status, your highest education, your whole bunch of other stuff like that. Things are very common data that you need every time you apply for something in the government. And we started designating agencies that owns what we call the single source of truth. So that's really the first very important starting point. The second starting point was that many governments tried to so-called integrate systems together, but that is really a mammoth task. As I said, many of these systems are legacy systems. Integrating them presents a huge technical challenge, and the cost associated that was just monstrous, basically. The second thing we did was something quite important. We created very much a government-wide API gateway. So the way that we share data is for each of these agencies that possess the single source of truth to create API. It goes through a gateway, an exchange. And then from there, different agencies can pull the data from this gateway. Now, that solves a lot of problems. And then I think the third part, which is quite important, is the fact that we started building a single interface to the citizens. For example, we came up with this app called LifeSG. LifeSG basically is a manifestation of moments of life, whereby you go in there, let's say you have a childbirth, you register everything in there, and it's one interface for everything, basically. And those things pulls data from multiple agencies, and they basically reflect the single source of truth for the citizens. The next stage becomes quite important, is personalization. How can we personalize the interaction with the citizen? Because everybody's needs is slightly different, maybe not very, very different, but how do we ensure that whenever you come in contact with government, the right kind of services are availed to you? But this is not easy for a couple of reasons, right? One is that personalization requires data. A lot of times people think of government having a lot of data, but government have what we call breadth of data. It means that we have data for everything from your pet license to your income, basically. That's a breadth of data. We got everything. But we don't have depth of data. Why not? Because citizens don't interact enough with government to give us a depth of data. So personalization becomes quite a difficult balancing item. How far do we go? And how convenient do we make it versus how much do we start imposing on the privacy of the citizens? So this is going to be the next big challenge for us, but it's going to be quite an interesting one. I think one of the key challenges that many government is going through right now is that Many systems, again, as I said, are legacy. They've been built for many years, many years ago. And because they're legacy, they are kind of locked in. And I think that's probably one of the biggest stumbling blocks for many governments. We kind of took a very open approach as far back as 6-7 years ago, slowly moving to the cloud. But and right now we are committed to move like close to 70% of our workloads to the commercial cloud, which is huge. So I rather we not build than to buy good tools out there, put it together, especially commercial tools, cloud native tools, etc., and make it work. So the key then is that you need a bunch of people who truly understands how to put things together and solve a problem, right? Rather than just write code for every single thing that comes into play. So my advice to a lot of people trying this is that start small. Try not to spend too much money in the beginning. Build an MVP, make it simple, and show results. And it can be done very quickly, especially now with cloud and with literally the myriad of software as a service and applications out there that we can just onboard and use. And it can be done, trust me.